Hey there. Have you ever just stopped and wondered what's really driving us? I don't just mean you and me, but like entire societies. Are we all just following some grand divine plan? Or is it all about our basic biology? Maybe something else entirely? Well, today we're going to dive into some of the biggest theories that have ever tried to answer that exact question. And look, this isn't just some abstract philosophical question, right? The answers, or at least what people believe are the answers, have shaped literally everything, from our laws and governments to how we form relationships. So let's dig in and investigate some of the most powerful and often competing explanations for human behavior ever cooked up. So here's our roadmap for this little explainer. We're going to start with that big core question. Then we'll check out some classic answers, God versus our genes. After that, we'll explore the idea of life as a constant battle, and then flip it to see if maybe it's a journey towards something better. And then just when you think you've got it all sorted, we're going to look at this whole thing from a completely different angle. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to start with what I like to call the one-size-fits-all theories. These are the really big, bold ideas that try to explain pretty much everything with a single, powerful concept. Our first stop on this tour is going to be inside our own heads, and maybe our souls. The big question here is, are we just characters in some cosmic drama between good and evil? Or are we really just animals, following the biological script written in our DNA? First up is the religious theory. The best way to think about it is like those old cartoons, right? You've got a little angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other, both whispering in your ear. From this point of view, our entire lives and all of human history is just one long struggle to listen to that right voice. And religion? Well, that's supposed to be the instruction manual to help us do it. All right, now let's pivot from the spiritual to the, purely scientific. The biological theory basically says, hold on a second, forget all that stuff. It argues that everything, and I mean everything, boils down to one simple primal drive, making sure our genes get passed on to the next generation. That's it. If our DNA doesn't make it, it's game over, evolutionarily speaking. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because the theory suggests there's this built-in conflict of strategy. For males, since the biological cost is pretty low, the best strategy is quantity, play the numbers game. But for females, pregnancy and childbearing is a massive biological investment. So their best strategy is quality, be super selective. This fundamental difference, according to the theory, creates a tension that drives a huge amount of our social behavior, our rituals, everything. Okay, so we've talked about the battles happening inside us. But what about the ones happening outside? The next couple of theories we're going to look at zoom out from the individual to the group, and they argue that human history is basically just one long, brutal fight for power. And this camp really has two big ideas. The first one sees history as this epic clash of civilizations, a constant struggle for supremacy between different cultural or racial groups. The second theory is a bit more personal. It's all about the money. It says, forget groups. We're all just individuals ruthlessly trying to maximize our own bottom line. Now, I have to make a really important point here, one that our source material is very clear on. When we talk about this theory of cultural or racial conflict, we are absolutely not endorsing it. The point is to understand that it is a theory that some people believe, and it's had a massive and often incredibly destructive impact on the world. It's crucial to understand these ideas to understand history. Okay, that's enough of the doom and gloom, right? What if all this conflict isn't just pointless chaos? What if it's actually leading us somewhere better? Let's take a look at a much more hopeful vision of where we're all heading. And that brings us to the core idea of liberalism, which really came out of the Enlightenment. It's this belief that history is like a great big river. Now, that river might have some twists and turns, even some rapids, or parts where it seems to flow backward. But ultimately, its current is pulling us in one direction, towards a world of more reason, more freedom, and more justice for everyone. It's kind of like the promise of a heaven here on earth. All right, let's just hit pause for a second and recap where we've been. We've got 5 totally different ways to explain, everything. Are we driven by God, our genes, our tribe, our wallets, or by some grand ideal of progress? Man, that's a lot of competing options on the table. But what if all of these theories, as different as they sound, are actually just different pieces of a much, much larger puzzle? What if there's one single idea, a bigger framework, that can actually connect all of these dots? And this is where our source material suggests that maybe there is a different way to look at all this, a new lens that might just bring everything into focus. That lens is game theory.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You've probably heard of it with stuff like economics or maybe poker, but the argument here is way bigger than that. The idea is that all of human interaction, from love and dating to business and war, can be understood as a series of strategic games.
Just think about that for a second. What if the religious struggle between good and evil is a kind of moral strategy game? What if dating is just a game to maximize your genetic payoff? What if politics is nothing more than a high-stakes game of power and influence? If you see everything as a game, then the question isn't just what drives us anymore. It becomes, what game are we playing, and how do we play it better? Now that's something to chew on. Thanks for joining me.